Salem, the podcast.
We are your hosts and favorite Salem tour guides.
My name is Jeffrey Lilly.
And I'm Sarah Black.
And today we have a special guest with us.
Our first fellow tour guide, Mike Vitka, a.k.a. Dr. Vitka of Spellbound Tours.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here. I think this is going to be a very fun afternoon.
We are so excited to have you. We've already been chit-chatting away and finally got that thing on record because we're just missing too much good stuff already. Bigfoot erotica.
That's the best kind.
Salem trials.
That's from you, Sarah, right?
No, don't do that.
Have you been writing something on the side?
Guys.
Some fan fiction?
Dude.
I would buy a ticket for Bewitched right now if that was what the tour entailed.
Just an FYI, they are ganging up on me right now. Let the record show that I own no Bigfoot erotica, and these two are all about it.
You don't need to own it when you live it. Like that poor man in Ape Canyon. But that was a real thing. Look it up.
Okay.
No Bigfoots in Salem, unfortunately.
No.
Unfortunately.
Okay, Mike. So you've been working with Spellbound Tours since 2003?
Yes. 2003 is when I got involved in Spellbound Tours. I'd been in Salem for about a year at that point, and I'd been working in the tourist industry and going to Salem State, and I had a very unusual paranormal experience, which if you want I can tell you about. And from there, I met a woman named Molly Stewart, who at the time was one of the best paranormal investigators in the country. And at the time, she actually had a little museum that was full of her ghostly photographs and creepy artifacts from all around the world. She had a real executioner's sword in there.
My gosh.
And I got introduced to her, and from her, I learned about paranormal investigation, did some investigations with her, and then kept working for the company, telling the Salem stories, learning about the Salem hauntings, and then going out and doing investigations from time to time. And it's been like that since, oh boy, 2003?
Pushing 20 years.
Pushing it hard.
Congratulations.
The company, this year, we've been celebrating 20 years as Spellbound Tours, but after everything went to press, I actually talked to Molly, and she said she started in 2000, so this is the 22nd anniversary of Spellbound Tours.
But this is your company now.
Now, yep, when she retired, I took over the company.
Well, congratulations.
That was back in 2012, and we've really seen it grow a lot since then.
So this is your 10th year anniversary?
It is. I feel like we should celebrate.
We should get, I don't know, cupcakes.
We should record a podcast.
We could record a podcast.
That is a good way to celebrate.
Now, might I say, since I've been coming to Salem, my father moved here back in 2010, and as soon as he got here, he wanted to bring us to all the cool Salem stuff, right?
Yes.
Now, I will say we never took your tour.
Oh, no.
But
Wow.
Sorry, but I remember seeing you on the streets with the top hat and like the steampunk vibe and the cane, and you're just strutting down Essex Street. There's something about your aura that I don't think I've ever used that word before, but I don't really know how else to describe it. You carry the vibe. I feel like I use that word too much, but you carry yourself. There's just something so cool about you. You are Salem cool.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, unlike you, I've been on Mike's tour probably 5
Well, I mean,
or 6 times.
we took it together.
I remember. I was surprised when they took it. I should have known. I knew something was up when I saw the name come in.
I was being a little cheeky.
When Jeff took the tour, the name that came on the ticket manifest was Ray Parks, the actor who played Darth Maul.
And why on earth would I have used that alias, Mike?
Well, Jeff and I actually went to high school together back in, I think, 1897 or something.
I think something like that.
And when The Phantom Menace came out, we were so excited.
Oh, that was a day.
It was a lot of, and I dressed up as Darth Maul. I did the makeup. I had my head shaved and my hair spiked into perfect horns like Darth Maul.
Shaved his whole head, bleached
Except
the tips.
for the tufts.
That's commitment right there.
And people saw my face in line for the movie ticket. They thought it was a mask. And then I would say, oh, thank you. And they would freak out.
You were first in line. You went to the Tingsboro movie theater and bought a dozen or more tickets.
I skipped school that day to get the tickets.
Yep.
And even some of the teachers bought them from me.
Miss Cook McEachern was with us.
She took the tour too.
Did she?
She took the tour maybe about 2 years ago. It was very nice to see her again. So if she's listening, hello.
And hello. But yeah, and then we skipped school. You were first in line. That we had like deck chairs, and we were waiting in line for like 12 hours.
It was fun. And as much as people say the Phantom Menace kind of sucks, and they're not entirely wrong.
They are not.
I will never forget how much fun the hype going into
and that
it
night,
was.
just with everyone in line, we were like sitting there playing cards, ordering pizza.
We had that Star Wars disco record on.
It was that was a lot of fun.
I end up going back to that movie just because I remember the fun leading up to it. It's not even so much the quality of the movie; it's just the excitement from
It's the nostalgia.
the fact that there had been no Star Wars for 20 years, and then there it was.
All of a sudden.
But
Jeffrey, did you dress up?
I did not. I did not. I did have a top hat on though. There's a picture somewhere.
Who in Star Wars wears a top hat?
I was just a weird high school kid who wanted to wear a top hat, okay?
Well, you did the Vampire the Masquerade game, if I'm correct.
I did.
Right?
I did.
I wish I'd gotten into that back then because it seems like so much fun.
Yeah, I did do a lot of that, but the vampires in Star Wars, vampires today, like I still do the vampire thing today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that stuck with me as well.
I know some of the people in the vampire crowd are also big Star Wars fans,
Yes.
mostly like Sith Lord types.
Oh, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
They're probably Slytherin too. Yeah.
That's the house I got put in.
Jeffrey's pointing at his portrait of Salazar Slytherin sitting on the mantle.
Thank you.
Now, what house are you in, Sarah?
Ravenclaw.
Oh, no. My ex-wife
100%.
was in Ravenclaw.
I'm good. I'm good
We
with
can still
it.
be friends.
I'm totally good with it. If you knew me in school.
No, to be fair, you're
Tread lightly here.
At least you're not in Gryffindor. We can say that.
the iconic Ravenclaw with their books and Sarah with her research, I think might be. I am getting death glares through the.
I used to be known as I had 2 aliases when I was in school because I was working so much and I'd taken so many classes at once. So it was just a lot going on, 45 hours a week, 16 credit hours. I wasn't all the way there. And so I was School Sarah, and School Sarah was very testy and she'd lash out sometimes. But then when finals were over, Summer Sarah comes out to play.
Is that the one who's on the roller skates?
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
now Sarah is always on the roller skates, but I am seeing a bit of a resurgence of this duality with this podcast. Just
I
'cause
have
it's
not
taking,
experienced that side of you at all, in any way, shape, or form.
I don't believe him.
I wouldn't believe me either.
Speaking of skates, I got my first request to do a tour on skates.
Oh, do
Yeah.
you think that will be safe with the Salem streets?
No. Well, at first I kind of laughed. I think part of it was just her joking around, but she says, I'm from New Hampshire. When are we going to do a tour on skates?
And you're like, never, because
But-
I'm not going down Essex Street on roller skates.
But I literally just went down. Well, it depends on what part of Essex.
Yeah.
Of course, you can't do the ped mall, the pedestrian mall, on skates, but you can do either side of it on skates. You can do Chestnut. You can do Derby. You can do all around the Commons. You can do in the Commons. So I think one of these days I may put together a little skate map of Salem, and I may gather up some skate friends and go around and talk history. Obviously, we will not be moving while talking, but we will stop in front.
Are you part of that skate hags group?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. They're an incredible group of people down in Boston. We meet every Monday from 6:30 to 8:30.
Just want to pause for a second.
Why?
Does anyone smell? Is that smoke? Okay,
That's terrible.
Hold on. The 3 fire trucks across the street.
We literally just recorded the fire episode and just talked about
The
this.
Great
looks
Fire of 1914.
serious. Yes.
Are we still recording or no?
Yeah, but it's okay.
So, that little interruption was fun.
Pardon the interruption.
We got to witness a garbage truck on fire.
Smoldering.
An
at
actual
least.
garbage fire right out on Lafayette Street. Is that a metaphor for Salem in some way?
I don't know, but I feel like the Salem trash memes should probably
Get down here.
get down
Did
there.
you get a picture and send it up there to him?
I did not. I probably should have. My apologies if you never get to see the dumpster on fire. Dump truck on fire.
Well, I mean, don't apologize unless you set the fire.
That's fair. I did not set the fire.
So many fires lately.
I know.
The
Tis the season.
city is being cleansed.
So, Mike,
Yes.
have you always been into spooky things?
Yes. Ever since I was a little kid. The first movie I ever saw that was not an animated feature was the original Frankenstein.
Ooh.
I had found that in the library, in the public library. They had that series of books with the orange spines. I know anybody listening of a certain age and certain inclination will recognize these, the Crestwood series books. And they were all about the classic monsters. They had ones for just about every specific monster and some on just genres like Mad Scientist and Wolfmen and stuff like that. And I just became obsessed with the original Boris Karloff portrayal of the Frankenstein monster from 1931. And I just begged my parents, and they finally rented it on a big VHS. And
love
it was very frightening for like a 5-year-old.
Yeah,
And
that's
it
young.
still sticks with me today. I remember I always wanted to leave the Halloween decorations up. There was one, it was a big jointed Frankenstein monster, which I've been trying to identify which particular one it was since then. I have one photograph of me with it when I was a kid, and I think I've pinned down the artist who made it, but it's really rare. Like I'll do eBay searches every couple of weeks for die-cut jointed Frankenstein. But
Yeah,
this-
so those are the ones with
The movable arms.
Yes,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
arms and legs that move. And I found similar ones, but this exact one is elusive.
because it probably was just another random one, but that happens to be your one.
The one that speaks to me
Yes.
still. I'll try to dig up that photograph and put it on the Spellbound Instagram
That
at
would
some
be good.
point.
Love to see that.
But yeah, I always liked spooky stuff. When I was really little, I also had what may or may not have been a UFO type encounter. So yeah, it's always been there.
Now you've always liked the UFOs.
Oh, yes. I mean, honestly, I'll tell people when they ask, ghosts are my career, but UFOs are something of a passion.
That's fair. Yeah, in high school it was UFOs and Elvis.
Yes, definitely. I am so excited for that new Elvis movie coming out.
Right, it looks really
Like,
good.
I'm going to see that at Salem Cinema, and I'm really looking forward to it.
it looks
You're
good.
going to dress the part? I'm assuming you have an Elvis.
I can't fit in my jumpsuit anymore, but I do have a beautiful gold sequined sport coat that looks an awful lot like that one he wore on those tours, like I think 56 and 57. So yeah, I'm probably going to wear that to the premiere.
Very nice. Snazzy.
If my hair grows out enough by then, I'll comb it up. Yeah, Elvis can't be beat.
So, were you a ghost believer then as well?
Not particularly. I always liked the idea of ghosts, and I always thought ghosts were fun and interesting, but they always seemed to be just stories.
Because you mentioned this moment in your life that really...
Yes, that happened when I was going to Salem State University, and which, by the way, parts of that university are very haunted.
So this is an authentic haunted Salem ghost story.
Yes. In fact, honestly, the only paranormal investigation that I ever called off was at Salem State.
Whoa.
The partner I work with is extremely skeptical, which is a good kind of person to work with. It's my friend Nicole Ferrie. She's the person who just put on the Dark Spring Goth and Post-Punk Music Festival in Boston. But she was doing the investigation with me, and we were at a particular part of Salem State, which I won't disclose which part it was.
Like we can talk about this later though.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Yep. And we were actually scouting for potentially having it be used on one of the ghost shows that reached out trying to find out
very
where's
cool.
good to go in Salem. And we were there, and she got spooked. And she's like, well, we should leave. And when someone like her gets spooked, it's really time to go. So she got in the driver's seat. I got in the passenger seat. And it felt like somebody else got in the car behind us. The car actually lowered down. It felt like somebody was there, and we did not talk about it. When you do an investigation, it's not really a good idea to talk about what you're feeling and experiencing because you don't want to confabulate on memories.
Okay.
But it felt like somebody was right there basically breathing down our necks, and we both had the same exact mental picture of who it was behind us. And this feeling did not dissipate until we got back to where we were going. We got back to the office, which was in her house, and whatever it was got out. And then we started talking about it, and we both had the same mental image of a young woman in 1940s kind of clothing.
That's so specific.
And she'd basically seemed like she'd hitched a ride from Salem State to where we were living on Howard Street, right across from the Howard Street Cemetery. And that was very, very spooky. And what made me think it had some real validity to it is we both imagined exactly the same person behind us. Like, we did not discuss it until we'd taken records of what we felt like we were experiencing.
Wow. So you both had the same image, and it's not your common like dark figure with a top hat.
Right,
It
exactly.
is a female, and you said 1940s?
1940s clothing.
That's eerie.
It was very weird, especially considering the history of that building. It was strange because there had now, where we were at, was an administrative type building. Way, way, way back when it had been a convent full of nuns. Never would there have been a young girl in 1940s clothing. And then we did a little research. Turned out at one point there had been a Catholic girls' school there.
Oh,
And it seems
just
like
got chills.
one of them kind of decided to join us. But that wasn't the story that made me want to get involved professionally in ghosts. That was something fun that happened later. So
Something fun that happened later. Okay, sure.
So it was, I believe, 2003 or 2004, and I was going to the university, and I got a part-time job at 10 Federal Street, which you guys will know is the
know
site
very well.
of the original witch dungeon. It was actually for the Massachusetts Bar Examination Group. They were training lawyers to pass the bar. They'd rented space right where the dungeons had been.
Kind of ironic.
Yeah, isn't it? And so me and the girl who was working there, who's the feature of this story, we would hear what sounded like footsteps just kind of clumping up and down the hallway. Would see lights going on and off. And that was spooky, but it could have been explained. But then one day she stood up, like to go to lunch. She got up, and then she was pushed right back down to her desk. And she stood up again, and she was pushed back down again. And then she got up again and was slapped across the face.
Oh, my God.
And we saw a big red mark on her face, like somebody had hit her. And she said it felt like electricity going through her body. And that is what made me want to investigate ghostly stuff more. That's when I sought out Molly Stewart and wanted to get involved and join like a ghost hunting team.
Right. So you were right there when it
I
happened.
saw
like you
it happen.
Oh, my gosh.
And isn't it funny that that took place at the site of the dungeon, and the people who were having the experiences were people in the law type profession?
Mm-hmm. I think we sometimes joke about that spot just because it is a modern day large office building, like how, everything in Salem is haunted, but really that place holds so much history and energy on that spot.
Well, I think it speaks to the haunted history of that building, because I know we all go by it on our tours, and Salem, we all know, everything is super expensive, yet there's no vacancies. There's always vacancies in the 10 Federal Street building. There's like a permanent sign that says space for lease. Like, you can't get an apartment or a shop or anything, but
That
10
building is
Federal
always half
Street
empty.
is wide open.
Ah.
Oh, now you're going to go get a shop.
I was going to say,
Open it at
Jeff,
10.
you want to open up a... open up... podcast studio.
In there. No, because then what's going to happen is we're going to be recording, and then all the audio is going to be overlaid with weird, creepy stuff, and we're going to have to record again, or the audio is just going to come out like silent. We'll be like, oh, we recorded like 2 hours worth of audio, and then there's nothing there. No, that does not seem like a smart idea.
We did have a moment the other day when something weird happened on the audio, not this audio, but
Oh, that's that.
yeah. So we were
happened?
talking about Bridget Bishop and our experience down at the memorial for the 330th anniversary of her death.
Oh,
They did a
yes.
nice
That was
little-
just a few days ago.
Yes. So we decided to do a quick recording on the Bewitched statue defacement, and we included our experience down at the memorial. And as I'm talking about it, Jeffrey's laptop starts speaking.
So
like it's almost
the Siri, and then you ask a question,
Right.
right? But I can be like, Siri, open Google. It's not on. It doesn't happen. It doesn't work.
And it's also, I'm assuming it's calibrated to your voice.
Yeah, but it's also not like Siri, Google, Siri, why is the sky blue?
Like it's not doing any, but it decided to start repeating back to me and trying to search out the words that I described, or I said, do you remember what it was? It was something like
No, I can't
ceremony for her. And then his laptop says, okay, searching ceremony for her.
That's odd.
It was creepy.
And it doesn't do it. It was like, hello.
Yeah, she's not listening. Siri's asleep
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So we had one a couple years ago. This pertains to malfunctions and audio distortions. I also do a podcast. It's called Spellbound Salem Radio, and barely anybody listens to it, but we have fun.
But everyone listen, go check it out.
It's
Yes,
my
please
friend
do.
Bridget and I do it. And when we were first starting, our original idea was just to, review weird books. And we were doing one called Flying Saucers and the Three Men. And it's a book from the 50s that...
It sounds like a Little Red Riding Hood or some like...
I was going to say it sounds like the Bigfoot erotica. But yeah, this
you
is...
keep going back to that.
This is the book that basically invented the Men in Black myth. Flying Saucers and the Three Men, written by Albert K. Bender. It's from that book that we get the Men in Black stories today. It all grew from that book. And Bridget and I read the book. We were talking about it. But every single time we mentioned the Men in Black, we'd lose the feed. We were not able to record. The episode kept dropping. We had to keep calling back. We had to keep recording. I'm sure it was just a coincidence, but every time we mentioned the Men in Black, it would like crackle, would hear like a little beep. It was done. I don't think we ended up finishing that episode. We tried
so weird.
several times, and every time the Men in Black were referenced, it was and that was the end.
I mean, there's some things you just don't talk about, right? Like I mentioned the Scottish play. Just
I'm going to say it.
don't say it.
Should I say it?
It's bad luck.
I mean, we're not in a theater, so
We're not
it's
in a
okay.
theater. I don't know.
Yeah, we can say it not in a theater.
We can say it not in a theater.
Yeah, Macbeth.
You're not supposed to do
Garbage
that?
fire.
Oh no, that's like a big. You don't say the name. You don't say the name.
Yeah, you're not supposed to say
That name.
Macbeth.
It's the Scottish play.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Big taboo. Big superstition. You don't know.
We said it in school.
Well, when you were reading it,
Yeah.
not in the theater though, right?
Oh, it's only
Like it's okay if you're like sitting, but still you should probably just refer to it by its.
interesting.
And the actors can say the name when they're performing it, but you're not really supposed to say it off stage, I guess.
The more you know.
Yeah, but I love it because that's also where we got a lot of construct of witches from. Is
Yes,
from
yes.
Shakespeare.
Oh yes, the three.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they
Bubble, toil and
a
trouble.
lot of fun stuff they put in there. The nose of a Turk.
Yes. Yeah. I think we might have talked some of that on the Familiar episode.
Macbeth?
It starts with the three witches stirring up their cauldron.
Yeah, we did not mention it on the Familiar
Did
episode.
not. Oh, that was probably just in my notes because they talk about some constructs of these creatures and things that the witches are using. So
My favorite familiar of all time is the ridiculous notion that Bridget Bishop had a pet monkey who was her familiar. Have you heard that tale going around?
So this is we talked about this in our Familiar episode, and it's her neighbor John Louder who claims that he saw a chicken-footed, black-furred, human-faced imp, and when it spoke to him through a remarkably human-like face,
Yes.
is his claim.
A little capuchin.
Yeah. So I personally think that is a valid and true claim.
I thought he was making up the tale of this demon, and then through the years we tried to explain it by saying, "Oh, she had a pet monkey brought over from one of the ships."
So I think that the monkey thing I've heard is taking it like 4 steps too far. However, I think he is experiencing sleep paralysis and hallucinations. And the reason that he'd been looking at Bridget Bishop in her apple orchard at all was because her chickens had escaped their chicken coop. So his hallucination from a construct of thing he's being cursed by a witch is this sort of re-hallucinated imaginative, sure, construct of this chicken-footed, black-furred, human face thing. So the chicken that he's been staring at now has a human face and is talking to him.
Did they ever describe if the face looked like somebody they knew?
No, he said
Just said human.
human.
I think just the idea of the human face being transposed onto this impish creature is jarring enough.
I think it said with a remark. I think that the transcript said a remarkably human face.
A remarkably human face.
But not. It doesn't actually say a human face.
Similar to a human.
Yes.
So like Gwyneth Paltrow? But I'm glad you brought up the idea of sleep paralysis, because that's something, when people come to me with their own ghost stories, the very first thing I always try to rule out is sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
So many people, when they are having encounters, whenever the story starts out with them being in bed, you know where it's going to go. If you're seeing things and you cannot move,
the Sasquatch is where that's.
I wish. No, if you're in bed, if you're reclined, if you're sort of on that brink of sleep and wakefulness, if you're seeing something that shouldn't be there, try to move. If you see the thing and you can move and it doesn't go away, that's when you should be worried. If you see the thing and you can even move like a little finger, if you can move even a little bit, it might be something. But if you can't move, you can just chalk it up to sleep paralysis.
So the only thing that I will say to counter that is my own experiences.
Ooh.
So I have my own little version of sleep paralysis, and we've talked about this in a previous episode. And I won't even say it's sleep paralysis because I don't lose any movement at all. But when I awake, when my eyes are open, I see what it's usually not even tied to a dream, but there is that crossover where it is straight up a visual. I have run out of the bedroom before. I have searched the floor, like looking for things because I thought I saw something. The first time it ever happened, I thought it was a ghost. I literally called my boyfriend at the time. I was in high school. I was like, I just saw a ghost. I just saw a ghost. He probably thought I was crazy. I was just coming out of it, but I had seen a woman hovering above me, and
which is pretty much exactly
sleep paralysis.
Right. But thankfully, I'm able to move.
Was it work, Sarah, or was it summer, Sarah?
It was work, Sarah. We've talked about this too. Very stress induced.
Yep.
That's usually when it arises. Yeah.
Do you have sleep problems in general?
Not too much. No,
Okay.
I actually have not experienced it in a good 5 or 6 months, I'd say.
It's probably for the best.
Probably.
Do you find it correlates with stress in your life?
Sometimes
Okay.
it just happens. Oftentimes it's a spider, which is the worst.
The one
Like a-
time I've
It's been
ever hallucinated
huge, small, multiple.
was a spider. I woke up and I saw the spider. It was kind of see-through, and it was just crawling up the wall, and I thought I was losing my mind because it was a see-through black spider.
And it wasn't real.
It wasn't there. I couldn't touch it. I couldn't even barely see it. And then once I fully woke up, the thing was totally gone, and I was definitely freaked out.
I've seen things that aren't even natural, basically like the familiar you described, but large. So if anything, that's
exactly
You're a
what
witch.
these people.
Sarah.
No, I'm being targeted by a witch.
Hold on. That's a mark.
Stop it.
I see a witch's mark upon you. Do you have pins?
I do. We can get some.
Yeah.
We could.
Guys.
Let's go to the Peabody Essex Museum and get the real pins.
Oh, they have real pins?
They have a jar of pins in their collection. And at one point, they had been on display as the witch pricking pins. Later on in history, people tried to recant that and say they were basically just used as old paper clips to hold papers together. Mm-hmm. But I like the original interpretation that they were used to poke people. Yeah, that's just one of the secrets that fine institution is holding on to.
Do you have a favorite object in the Peabody Essex Museum? Jeffrey is particularly fond of the long-necked penguin.
Yes! Oh, I love him. The long-necked penguin.
I can't decide between a mistaxidermied penguin and a murder weapon. It's if you want to know my personality.
The club is my favorite.
Do you remember the turtle, which has been dripping oil for hundreds of years?
Yes.
I used to see that when I'd go with my father sometimes.
I think he's on display
he
in the
finally
Salem
got brought back.
A to Z exhibit.
And he's still oily.
Yes.
But my all-time favorite thing that the Peabody Essex Museum owns is Blackbeard the Pirate's skull.
Yes.
And that is something which you can do your research, and the trail ends at the Peabody Essex Museum.
Unequivocally.
Yep. The story goes that Blackbeard's final battle down in North Carolina, he may have gotten too drunk on rum. His ship was swarmed by the pirate hunter, and Blackbeard, unfortunately, finally went down in battle. He was shot multiple times. He was stabbed multiple times. In fact, there's one guy who stabbed him. Blackbeard actually said to him something like, "That was a good stab, lad," or something to that effect. And Blackbeard finally expired. And when he was dead, his head was chopped off his shoulders. The body was tossed into the ocean. The legend says that the body swam around the ship 13 times trying to find the head. Now, I'm pretty sure that's just a legend, but
the current could have just been swirling and the body might have been floating around.
Could you imagine with the blood pouring out of all the wounds?
That would have been gorgeous.
The sharks coming. But the head itself was saved. The guy who decapitated Blackbeard, he tied it to the mast of his ship and just came into port, and everybody saw that head, and some people rejoiced, some people were sad to see Blackbeard gone. The bounty was claimed on Blackbeard, the head hung around for a while, then the skin was stripped from the bone, the skull got cut, and they scooped out the brain, and the skull got silver-plated, and they say it was turned into a drinking goblet. I'd love to use that, wouldn't you?
I would get so drunk on that. Like, I would.
Would you drink grog, or would you have to drink the beverage they called the Skull Rattler?
I don't. Anything.
That was the one George Washington liked, the Skull Rattler.
I don't think I'd care.
It's like, I just want to drink out of a skull.
Well, it gets even better, too, because you see it referred to as a goblet, but it's actually more like a serving bowl. And weirdly enough, in some tellings, they refer to the bowl as the infant. And so it'd be ladling out this like creaky grog from the infant.
I mean, I have a skull in my room. We could.
Oh yeah, we should have some fun with them. But so yeah, the Blackbeard skull stayed in North Carolina for a very long time, and in the 1950s, it came into the possession of a somewhat local author, a man named Edward Rowe Snow. Now, Edward Rowe Snow was quite a character. He did a whole series of great books. It's History and Legends of New England. My favorite one of his series is Pirates and Buccaneers of the Atlantic Coast. And he ended up with Blackbeard's skull in his collection. And when he did his research, he spent a lot of the time in the Peabody Museum and the Essex Institute doing research because he wrote a lot of maritime stories. And after his death, his widow gave them the skull. The widow Snow gave Blackbeard's skull to the Peabody Essex Museum.
Gave it away.
And, I mean, it was under the impression it would be on display as an amazing artifact.
Of course.
But now it's hidden down in their archives. It's not to be seen by anybody.
I was going to say, it's not really their vibe.
They keep it locked under wraps.
Probably with the shrunken heads.
Well, the shrunk, I'll get to them in a minute.
Sorry to jump the gun.
The Blackbeard skull, the excuse is the provenance might be a little fishy, but at the very least, it's been a skull that has been purported to be Blackbeard's and presented as Blackbeard's since at least the 1600s. I mean, I feel they should bring it out, and if anything, if they have to qualify it, they can do what the British Museum does with the crystal skull and just have that little note, like how the British Museum explains that when the crystal skull was first discovered, people thought it was a real, somehow human skull made out of quartz crystalline material. Now we know it's a hoax, but it's still a very cool thing to see, and the British Museum has it right.
Like it's still historically important, regardless.
Right.
Yeah, for the interpretation of when they got it. And then
I want them to bring out the infant. I feel like every year they have the big fancy holiday ball at Hamilton Hall, and I do like to go to that. I missed it the past couple of years for COVID, but it would just make my year if they could bring the infant to the ball and we could all have our champagne out of that. Yeah.
I've been to the Hamilton. We saw it a few years ago.
Yes.
We went this past year. It wasn't quite up to.
Wasn't it like a sit down kind of thing?
Yeah. So there was no introduction, and
you didn't get to bounce on the spring floor.
Well, you could no bowing. You know how they normally announce
the court.
Yeah. So that wasn't in session, but. I'm not sure Hamilton Hall would be the right atmosphere for the skull.
Well, actually, I've got a kind of creepy Hamilton Hall story, too.
Well, why don't we save that one for...
Should we rewind to the shrunken heads, though?
Yes.
The Peabody Essex Museum had a great collection of human shrunken heads. I believe they're made by the Javaro tribe in South America. And before you have to ask, here's how you shrink a head. You start by cutting it off the body, and then you slowly, carefully peel the skin off of it. You want to peel it really carefully so you don't end up distorting it too much. And then you boil it slowly. You have to boil it for about 3 days because you don't want it to go too fast and turn to mush. You don't want to boil it too hard and have it come out like a well-done steak or something. And it just slowly shrinks and slowly shrinks. The common misconception is the skull is shrunk. That is absolutely not true.
It's just the skin.
It's just the skin. All the cartilage will melt out. The little ear bones will fall out. And after a few days, you end up with this little baseball-sized thing. And then you have to slowly, carefully sculpt out the features because the nose, the cartilage will just turn mushy. So you have to sculpt out the nose. The ears are usually fine. That's how you can tell a real shrunken head from a fake one, because with the fake ones that are made out of goat skin, the ears always look wrong. The ears are very vague and undefined. The real ones look like horrible little human raisins. And then the mouth and the eyes get sewn shut. And the idea, depending on who's doing it and whose head it is, it's either keeping the person's soul or spirit in there as punishment, or you can use it as a talisman to get their power to help you. There's ceremonial ones that are honoring your ancestors, and there's also ones to show that you vanquished your foe and you're lording it over him. You've got his head with you. And there's also what's called the tourist heads. A lot of the indigenous people realized that white colonizers were fascinated by these heads, and so they didn't want to sell their ceremonial ones. They also had a limited number of the ceremonial ones, so they just started lopping off heads and making them kind of half-assed for the tourists.
Oh my gosh.
And a lot of the heads that we see in American collections are the tourist heads. If anybody has a lead on a real shrunken head, I would buy it right now. But the Peabody Essex Museum has a bunch of heads in their collection, or at least they did. The Javaro tribe has been really big on getting their stuff repatriated to them. There's been a lot of negotiations. There's been a lot of legal stuff. And the heads of the Peabody Essex Museum are basically in the basement, earmarked to be sent back to South America.
That's good.
So, yeah, they're going
Return
back
to
to Brazil
home.
eventually. I wish somebody could crack that box open and slip me a head, but, I guess they're going home. You saw them on those school trips. We took a school trip to the Peabody Essex Museum, probably in 8th grade.
They used to have them out?
Yeah.
Oh, they were out. They were just there.
So
they were in the same area where they had the big cauldron for boiling down whale blubber. It was like,
That's so cool.
They used to have them in advertisements. So if you see for the Peabody Essex Museum from the 18, I'm not sure the
when it was
exact
the Essex
date.
Institute and the Peabody Museum, separate
They
entities.
have shrunken heads, and you can see them. The only ones I've ever seen that I know of was in the Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford, England.
Oh,
which were really, really cool.
Those, I love shrunken heads. Like the one I wear on my hat, he's a replica. He's a good replica, but he is one of the oh boy. Yeah, Jeff here just showed me a picture of a real one, and I get excited every time I see him.
Yeah, so this is from the Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford, England.
So just to clarify, the skull is still in there.
No skull.
No skull.
The skull is gone.
Skull is gone.
Oh, look at them. They're so cute. But yeah, the one I have on my hat, he's a replica, but the bones are human bones. You see the ring of bones on my hat?
Yes.
They're metatarsals, okay, like what you've got in your feet, and the one on the back is a vertebrae. Now, in most states, it is totally legal to buy and sell human bones,
Yes.
as long as they're retired medical specimens or they're so old that they're retired museum pieces. Unfortunately, you can't go dig your own up. Now, I like the bones because, honestly, I think they look cool, but a lot of people who work with spirits feel like the bones help endear themselves to the spirits. Like it's almost like a channeling kind of thing. You know how some people...
Like a connection.
Right. Like a lot of witchy people, they'll use wands, or they'll use crystals, and they'll use dowsing rods, and they feel that leads them to the spirit. It helps them connect. In my opinion, the crystals and wands and all that good stuff are tools to focus your own energy, but the bones sort of can serve the same purpose. Like, I like to explain those bones as almost being antennas to bring the ghost down.
I love skulls. I have a gorgeous skull in my room.
Where'd you get them from?
The oddities market here.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
this past winter.
This past winter. That was my little treat for myself for being a year in business.
That is a good celebratory piece.
Yes, yeah, and he's great. I should have showed him to you. So on it, someone in pencil had written the different pieces of the skull.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a lovely little thing.
I got one for my girlfriend a couple of years ago, also at the oddities market. It's a forensic skull. It had been a probable mafia hit. And the guy's teeth, he was a young man, but he has the most messed up giant horse teeth. And he sits on her shelf in her home, and she always puts a blanket over him when her parents come to visit.
No, mine's on full display.
Oh yeah, mine are out and proud.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I recall not too long ago when we took that tour, you kindly invited us back to your place, and
Yes.
we went out for a little walk with your dog.
Oh,
and
Luke, he's the
Luke,
best.
the cutest. But when you brought us inside, there was just casually a skeleton. Right next to the front door.
I need to get him mounted. He's an old secret society skeleton. He's so old that the sternum type piece was actually made out of human leather to keep him together.
Oh.
Nowadays they're using like a plasticky stuff. But yeah, if you ever come over again, I'll make you touch the human leather.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Luke, because he is a little ghoul. I was telling you this on the ride over. I live in a house from 1706, and so the nails are always popping out of the floor. I cut my foot, and he ran to the blood. He just was lapping it up. Like, I'm afraid to go to sleep. He'll eat me alive.
Got a vampire dog.
Cats will eat your eyeballs.
And they'll smother your babies, which means if I ever have a baby, I'm going to have to get a cat. Good you brought up Luke, because he figures into one of my favorite ghost stories that's happened to me. So you know where I live. You've been over there. You helped me move a couch into it.
Yeah, we're like neighbors.
And, almost all the tour guides live in the same neighborhood.
It's fun.
Except me.
Well, I mean, we'll get you in the McIntyre district eventually. But so, yeah, the house was built in 1706 for Captain Joseph Dean, who was a sea captain. And to my knowledge, he went down at sea. And the house, it's beautiful. It's in poor shape because it's old and not well taken care of. But I love living there because of the history. And it, at one point, was a hotel. It was a Dutch East India hotel for a little while.
Oh, that's so
Then
cool.
it was turned into like a tea room. If you go into my neighbor's apartment, you can actually see where the coat check room was at one point. And then it was like a gross rooming house. Now it's apartments. And shortly after I had moved in for the first time, after the tour, I'd taken Luke out for his walk, which I'm probably going to have to take him out for a walk again soon. But I took him out for the walk, opened the door to my apartment, and from inside, we heard a woman's voice say, "Good dog." And I didn't think anything of it because I knew somebody was coming over to visit. And then I realized she wouldn't have a key to get in, so that's weird. And then Luke didn't want to go in. I had to yank him in. And he just was staring at the corner of the room from which the voice emanated.
Oh, my God.
And that was definitely eerie. But then the nail in the coffin that really makes this special is when I looked into the lore of the house. When the woman was there alone as a widow, she became obsessed with her pets. Some people would have called her an animal hoarder at this point in history. So it totally makes sense that
her
would be
energy
saying
would have.
hello to Luke. Wow. And also, as a footnote to that story, there have been a couple of times when both the dog and I have been out, yet my girlfriend thinks we're in there because she hears his little tags jingling around. She hears the little doggy footsteps on the floor.
Oh, my goodness. I mean,
That's
what's
wild.
better than an animal ghost,
Oh,
right?
I hope he never dies. And when he does, he's being taxidermied.
Really?
Oh, I'm going to keep him forever.
Oh, I love that.
He's going to be right under that nice portrait of him. And that that was one of the things you wanted to ask about, too, is what one of my favorite things in Salem is.
Yeah.
In addition to the fact that you can just go out and buy a skull, for example, check out the Magic Parlor. That's also where you can get tickets for Spellbound Tours, by the way. But one of my favorite things about Salem, other than the spooky stuff, is that it is so dog-friendly. Like, I can be in a miserable mood and go outside and immediately be happy because everybody here has a dog, and they're almost all very good dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And
There's several of them with their own Instagram pages.
yes,
You're right. We
yes.
do have them.
Yeah.
Slinky.
There are some very, very wonderful dogs around the city.
And by the way, even the dog biscuit company here is haunted. New England Dog Biscuit Company.
The one right off of...
Right next to Red's.
Yep.
The folks who work there wanted us to do an investigation at one point because they were finding really creepy stuff. The guy got some electronic voice recording voices where he claimed he was able to actually make out specific words. They went in one morning and they found the, you know what bully sticks are?
Not really.
They're gross. They are dried bull penises for the dogs to chew.
Oh my God.
And he went in the morning, and the bully sticks were all laid out in these patterns that looked like runes.
What?
And they wanted us to investigate, but unfortunately, the landlord didn't really want to know. So we never got in to do an investigation. But the folks who work there and own the Dog Biscuit Company have had some pretty spooky encounters. So next time you get your little friends a treat, just pay attention if anything weird happens.
Yeah, that's where I get Felix's catnip from.
Oh.
Yeah.
The little cigar thing you got him the other day, was that? Am I making that up? No, the little pouch thing. The
Yeah.
little-
Oh, does he get the stuff, the meow-wanna?
No, he does not.
Yeah, Salem loves its animals.
It does.
Except
It
for the
does.
horrible monkey demon chickens.
I love those. Those are
Jeff
my favorite.
loves those.
It's because they have the human face.
Yes. Okay. So, Mike, you've been leading tours on the streets of Salem for quite a while now. Do you have any really horrible tourist stories?
I've only ever, in my, almost 2 decades of doing the tour, well, there have been some rough crowds, and more often than not, wonderful crowds. But I've only ever had to kick one group of people off the tour.
Oh, wow.
Like usually, if
I don't think I've ever.
if people are people are rowdy, you can sort of tone them down. You can make fun of them. If they're really, really bad, they'll weed themselves out. But this
Sometimes they just
one
leave or things
group
like that.
of people, I just straight out told them to leave. I don't even think we'd gotten to Giles Corey, which is maybe our first or second stop on the route.
Oh my gosh.
They were from a reality show.
What?
I'm not going to say which reality show it was. I'll tell you off air. But I will tell you that they had blowout hairstyles. And this was probably about 15 years ago. And they showed up so trashed. And they were so self-important. And I just had to tell them they needed to go. And they weren't even going to get a refund. Like, yeah, they were unbelievably awful. They made it maybe 100 steps on the tour before I gave them the boot.
Did they have like cameras and stuff following them? Was it part of the reality show?
Thankfully, no.
They were just from.
Yes.
They thought.
They thought it was about them when it wasn't.
They still thought the world.
Wait a minute. Now I'm
revolved
trying
around
to
them.
figure out what was big 15 years ago.
Well, I honestly don't want to say.
Right.
Because,
Yeah,
I'll tell you off air. But, we had a really scary bad tour experience a couple nights ago, maybe like 2 weeks ago. I was telling the story about the vampires.
Oh, you've been posting about this.
Yes. Yeah, I
Yeah.
posted once, and then one of our other people in the tour community, I think he's way more scared than I was about it even. But, I was telling the vampire stories, and I had everybody sitting on the steps of the old town hall, and this guy comes up. He comes up, and he's just like mumbling to himself. He's talking about assassination day is coming, assassination day is coming. And I say, oh, yeah? What's Assassination Day? It's my holiday, and nobody's going to know when it comes. I'm going to choose when it comes. I'm like, oh, okay. And then he was very earnest. Like, usually when people say dumb stuff like that on the street, they're like the street kids who want to get a rise out of you, or some of our local derelicts who might be nuts, but they're probably having fun, and they're definitely not going to shoot anybody. But this guy absolutely had the mass shooter vibe.
Oh my God.
And I don't like to call the police, but I actually did call this in. And what made it extra scary was he really had the profile down. He was in probably his mid-20s. He was probably white, and he was wearing a white T-shirt. He looked just like anybody who'd go to one of the downtown bars that like the college and post-college people will go to.
You wouldn't even know.
You would have no idea who this guy was, and he was proudly saying that his holiday, Assassination Day, would be coming soon. So yeah, that was terrifying. Although something really cool that I'm hoping turns out to be real is that the Ted Bundy thing sparked it in my mind. Are you guys familiar with the serial killers who get referred to as the Ken and Barbie killers?
Would that be like people that go after
no,
couples?
This is a specific couple.
Oh.
You want to look them up. It's gross. Their whole story would take another episode, and it doesn't quite pertain to Salem, but it was people who were on the surface were a perfect couple, but they were doing absolutely disgusting things. Now, the woman in the couple, she flipped on the man, and she only served a very short amount of time in prison. She was released to great controversy a couple of years ago. And as you guys know, whenever anybody buys a ticket for the ghost tour, you see the name they put in on the manifest.
Are you kidding me right now?
This woman's name is on the manifest for sometime later this year.
Oh.
And I really hope it's her. I know she changed her name after the crimes, but I wonder if maybe her credit card was old or something. I doubt it's really going to be her. It's probably just some unfortunate woman who shares the same name, but it is a pretty distinctive name. I'm going to bring like a knife that night for her to sign just in case. I don't think it's going to be her. It's probably somebody messing with us, but I hope it's her.
That's so cool. Let us know.
I sure will. Yeah, we get a lot of fun people on the tour. I always have to mention some hocus pocus stuff because we passed by one of the filming locations, and there was a group who got really tickled by the prospect of hocus pocus, and it turned out they were the folks who in real life had taken care of Binks the cat.
Stop it. What?
And that's the same reaction everybody else on the tour had. Like, we've had celebrities on the tour you would recognize, and people think that's cool, but I have never seen a group get more excited when they found out that Binks's family was with us.
So I actually had an interesting coincidental interaction with some folks. We were talking about hanging versus burning, and they asked, I hear all the time about burnings of witches. It's like, no burnings. And we've talked about this quite a bit on the podcast, but because it is a capital crime and the capital punishment for England was hanging.
I have to do that explanation too.
All the time. So
but I feel like people really appreciate that.
They do. And it's a very simple question that somehow just has not been put to bed, and it's very easy to answer. So I go a little bit further, and I explain, yes, it's even been done to animals too.
Yes.
And I bring up, I don't know if you guys are, I'm sure you are, familiar with the elephant that was executed by hanging.
Yep.
So
Wait, the elephant that was executed by hanging.
Yes. So
I thought you were talking about
Topsy.
Topsy.
This is not going to be about Topsy, I don't believe.
No. I didn't know he had a name. Topsy.
No, Topsy was the one that Edison electrocuted, then they hung.
Oh, I thought we were talking about the elephant that came to Salem.
No, that was the one they hanged.
Oh my gosh. No, I'm talking about...
How many elephants have been hanged?
Good Lord. What if we stumbled
Are you talking about the drunk elephant?
No.
Okay.
I thought you were talking about the drunk elephant.
I don't think this is Topsy.
No, Topsy is later. Topsy was later. Casualty of Coney Island.
Okay. So there was an elephant was in the circus, and it had stomped on or injured at least one person. And it may have even been more than one casualty. But they wanted to punish this elephant. So they put it on trial for murder. And then they executed it with a crane. So I just lightly sprinkle in a couple details to that explanation as to why they executed with hanging rather than burning.
Right.
And a couple stops later, the couple that I had been explaining this to, they go, Yeah, so that was actually our town that they brought the elephant to.
What? That's so cool.
Like, what?
Oh, that's great. Here's
I
another
can't even
good
remember
one.
the name of the town, but what? I think it was
That's so
somewhere in
cool.
Wisconsin, somewhere in the Midwest.
Probably like Baraboo or
Michigan
something,
or
where Circus
something.
World
Shut
is.
up.
But yeah, so that sparked something in my mind about the sideshow stuff. So I love the historic sideshows. I spent part of my life working with them. As you might have seen in the house, I've got portraits of all the famous freaks.
Yes.
And it's just such a wonderful culture and a wonderful part of American and world history. And there was a family whose last name was Lentini. And Lentini is a pretty unique name. So I had to ask. I asked, are you related to the guy who had 3 legs? And it turned out they were. They had just recently done their genealogy and found out that, like, their great uncle was Francisco Lentini, the famed 3-legged man who ended up owning his own sideshow. I hope they're listening, because if they get in touch with me, I do have an extra one of his pitch cards I can send them. I want to get that back into the family.
Yeah, that's...
I did mention the fact that he also had a little extra thumb growing on his knee, but I did not mention the fact he had 2 sets of working genitals.
Oh.
I figured they could find that out on their own. But it was really fun to have Lentini descendants on the tour a couple months ago.
Is he part Klingon?
Well, that's why poor Jadzia was always in the infirmary.
Oh, good Lord.
Do you think every time they went into the bedroom, Worf would say, "Today's a good day to die"?
Oh.
And then poor Dr. Bashir had to treat them.
He must have been jealous.
Deep Space Nine is the best Star
Although
Trek
he
series.
had Garrick to comfort
He
him.
did. He certainly did. I really hope they do a, like, where are they now kind of Deep Space Nine.
Oh, I don't... Oh, maybe.
I was hoping we'd get more Quark. I love the Ferengis.
Sarah's over here like, what on earth?
Have you not watched Deep Space Nine?
Sorry, no.
Oh, it's the best of all the Star Treks.
I don't know. It's one of my least favorite.
Oh, have you gotten through all of it?
Okay, so
I'm
this
going to
is...
throw these earphones
Okay,
down.
hold on. I don't want to get into this too much, but
Well, I mean, we can cut it if it's not pertinent.
sure. So within the scope of Deep Space Nine, you have several main characters. You have like the head of security, the head of the station, the head of communications.
A lot of heads.
Right? A lot of heads. And they're always the ones who are doing all the things. And you have no secondary or tertiary characters like the cartoon Lower Decks, right? You have all those guys.
Yep.
And from a standpoint where I spent 8 years in the Marine Corps, the chiefs of all of these operating units are not the ones going and doing all the things. You're not
Right.
sending, we're going to send the chief of security, head of the station, head of engineering off on a destroyer to go do a thing.
That totally makes sense.
You're like, you are probably never leaving your office, much less going to do all these things. And I understand the nature of the storytelling
Right.
within Deep Space Nine, but I'm like, if you could have just made like all these main characters be like, they don't have to be the heads of the station, just like 2 or 3 steps down, and then you have much more free reign to go and do all the things that they're claiming they're doing.
Yeah.
And it just sort of, whenever I watch it, it just sort of bugs me on that level. And
Like
I'm
a
like,
minutia, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, even in Next Generation, the chain of command was messed up. Like, Dr. Crusher ended up taking the bridge.
But at the same time, in like TNG and stuff, Riker's like, no, Picard, you can't go anywhere.
Smart.
Get back. What?
I said, that's smart.
Yeah, get back in your chair. We're gonna go, and he grabs like 5 guys who aren't. He's like, okay, for this one mission, we might need the chief of security. He's like, give me 4 security guys, and then he goes on the mission.
And the security guys will never come back.
No, they never come back. I had a guy on my tour the other night wearing a red shirt.
Oh, no.
So it said red shirt, and I was like, listen, I got to be extra careful with you. I don't want you to be the first person to die on a tour.
Well, are you checking your phone? Are you not down
No.
for Star Trek talk?
Sorry. No, I've never seen Star Trek, and my dad would appreciate this conversation. I was just looking up a little bit more about this hanging elephant for clarification.
Although, so getting back to it, when you were talking about the elephant, have you seen recently in the news the woman in India who was killed by an elephant.
No, what happened?
So, like, this is, like, within the past few days or weeks, a woman is killed by an elephant. She's 70 years old. And then at the funeral, the same elephant comes back, attacks the funeral, and takes her body and, like, smashes it.
What did she do to that elephant?
I'm dead serious.
I believe it. They're smart. There was that news story about the guy who worked with elephants, and then he was dying way, way far away from the elephants, yet somehow they could sense it.
They know.
And they walked for miles
They know.
and miles and went to greet him on his deathbed. They, like, reached their trunks through their windows, and he petted them.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, elephants, they should not be hanged.
And no joke. Yeah, you can go Google. This happened. I'm trying to Google it now. I was looking at it while you guys were talking.
That was one of the standout pieces in the Museum of Death in New Orleans, that little back room where they have the snuff film kind of things. One of them shows somebody's head being stomped by an elephant, and it's like a watermelon. It's like the car running over the guy's head in The Toxic Avenger, but it's a real head and a real elephant.
Anyone else smelling smoke again?
A little bit.
Am
If
I
we get
making-
enough elephants, they can put it out. But yeah, the drunk elephant story. Have you guys talked about that on the podcast?
We have not.
Not yet.
At all. I don't know when we're I mean, I guess now is a good a time as any.
That's one of my favorite Salem stories.
Will you tell us?
I will indeed. So the very first elephant to come to the United States, he first made landfall in Salem, Massachusetts. Now, they loaded him up onto the ship in India, and they didn't figure how much water an elephant would drink. And so they ran out of elephant water for elephants, like that not very good book. But so they ran out of water, and they had to give the elephant, the sailors, beer rations. And by the time the elephant landed in Salem, he staggered down the gangplank, and they tried to give him water, and he turned his trunk up at water for the rest of his life. He only would drink beer. And you can see the broadside posters about this elephant. They call it's like the strangest curiosity ever to be in the States. And the artist must have never seen an elephant because it has a weird, dinky little snake-like trunk. But it was only slurping beer through that trunk.
Oh my
Eventually,
gosh.
he got a bad end too. I think
he died not shortly after.
he trucked through some farmer's field and they shot him.
Yeah. Drunk, probably.
Yep,
But also, I believe the first
A
place
short life,
he was,
but a merry one.
You went cow tipping.
the first place he was put on display was Derby Square.
Yes,
right?
yep. He was a Crown and Shield
Yes.
passenger, I believe.
Yes.
Which brings me to another point. We see some people complaining about the festivals on the Common, and I just want them to look at the pictures. Even into the 1980s, they would have circuses on the Common. The Commons were made for public entertainment. You can see pictures of whole troops of elephants within our lifetime stomping around on the Common. So when people complain about having a little funhouse on the Common, just remember it was made for elephants.
It could be worse.
Well, and they say elephant dung is great fertilizer for tomatoes, so they should be thankful the elephants are coming.
More tomatoes. So when you were younger, you talked about that Frankenstein movie.
Yes.
Is that still your favorite horror movie, or do you have a favorite more horror movie that has come out since then that trumps that?
Oh, that is a tough one because I love so many horror movies.
You
And I
got
have to
one.
Sort of break it down by genre.
Hey, pick one.
Boy, I love Dr. Phibes so much I've got a tattoo of him, but I've got to say, and Freaks is so good. And, like, if we're going to go into slashers and stuff, there's The Burning, but I would
I've
say...
never heard of any of these.
Take notes.
I am.
But, this is tough. Like, The Raven has Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff, and they're both so good, and Karloff has that line like, maybe if I wasn't so ugly, I wouldn't do such ugly things. But, boy, I might have to go with Murders in the Rue Morgue from 1932. That's Lugosi, hot off of Dracula, being punished because he didn't agree to play the Frankenstein monster. And it was a director, I believe, Robert Florey. And it was a very loose adaptation of the Edgar Allan Poe story. And it starts in like a carnival sideshow kind of setting, and it's very impressionistic. It almost looks like watch the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari when they were doing the art design, and Lugosi is kind of struggling with his English, but he's talking about how they can make the best person that's going to be evolving from an ape into a man, and he's doing mad scientist stuff. He's got an educated ape named Eric, and it's just wonderful. And then he gets this woman who he doesn't realize was like a sex worker, and he's going to use her blood to do the mad science, and then he realizes she has impure blood and ends up having to, dispatch her in the river, and the ape is going out and doing the murders, and it's so dark and creepy looking.
Somewhat bizarre.
And it is. The ape stuffs somebody up into a chimney like in the book. There's implications that the ape is having inappropriate interactions with people, and then there's Lugosi just lording it over and performing like he's on stage, and all the sets are just so eerie and off kilter. It's the universal production value, but it's more of like a B movie kind of thing.
Okay.
And it's very, very creepy, and it's a lot of fun.
Say that one again for me. The name?
Murders in the Rue Morgue, 1932, with Bela Lugosi and Eric the ape. The ape was a guy in a suit, though.
Did he have a like the Sasquatch?
It was implied.
Okay.
There was implications. They couldn't show, although for the time it was very scandalous. The censors hated the movie because when the woman was being used for the experiments, they had her tied up in a very bondagey looking position, and she was also on almost like a crucifix. So it was offensive to both Catholics and people who didn't like sex.
Oh,
So-
how dare we? The TV hasn't changed much.
It's such a good movie.
I remember I was watching a something on the newer Hannibal TV show, and it was very gory and whatnot. And there was this position where they had flayed these two people, and their back skin was sort of in these angel wing things. And I guess the censors were like, "We can see some butt crack." So they were okay with all the flesh and the mutilation,
Yes.
but the butt crack was where they drew the
Oh,
line.
don't even say butt crack. I'm scandalized.
So what the set designers did is they just threw more blood onto the
boy.
scene, which
Onto
then,
the butts.
Can
and
you
then
imagine being that actor having to wash that out?
it was probably staged. It was probably a
Oh, like a CGI
yeah.
blood?
So they just added more blood to the scene, so that the butt crack was too much, but the heaps of blood was okay. So we got your favorite horror movie, but as this is Salem, it is the witch city.
It sure is.
Do you have a favorite witch or wizard?
Well, I wanted to be obscure and say like, oh, Vincent Price in the Mad Magician, but I'm going to go kind of basic on this one. I love Professor Marvel in The Wizard of Oz.
Oh.
Like, honestly, as far as the portrayal goes, it's wonderful. Like, you go into his little gypsy-style caravan, and it's got the skulls and the tapestries, and he creates the image of being this all-powerful, all-knowing guy who can tell the future, but really he's just doing little parlor tricks. Like, he puts the blindfold on Dorothy and looks in her purse to find the information, and then by the end of the story, as the actual wizard in Oz, as the title of the movie and book is, he becomes the guy who kind of saves the day. So I like the fact that we've got the wizard who is a total charlatan, but in the end kind of makes himself into a real wizard. That's the one I'm going to go with. Professor Marvel.
That's fabulous.
This might be like, I think this is like my favorite question to
It's
ask everyone.
complex.
Have you gotten good answers on that one?
Yeah.
And they're
yeah.
always different.
They're always different.
Although we've gotten a lot of long bearded men for the favorite
Oh,
wizard.
like Oberon Zell is cool. Has he come up yet?
No.
He was the guy in Vermont who learned how to mess with goat horns when they were babies. He would take the horn buds and graft them so they'd grow out like a big unicorn horn.
What?
And he was the guy who did the unicorn for Ringling Brothers in the 80s. And he founded like a commune up in Vermont, a witchy commune.
Well, it's Vermont.
He published the Green Egg pagan magazine. So as far as like a flesh and blood real wizard, Oberon Zell is super cool.
And he's got a nice long beard.
Oh, yeah, he looks the part.
Very cool.
Now, while we're talking about the Wizard of Oz, something that's come up kind of recently. I'm curious, where do you guys fall on the green face issue?
As in, like,
People making themselves up as witches.
oh,
Because there were some people in the modern witch and pagan community who find the green face paint and the hook nose stereotype to be just horrifically offensive.
interesting.
And there are other people who embrace it as, oh, it's just fun and kitschy, and it gets people into witchcraft. And maybe if you see, the Wicked Witch or the Witch in H.R. Puffin stuff or whatever, and you think that's fun, it might lead you to learning more about real witches.
Right.
So this sort of touches back on something we've talked about a few times, where is that tourism, pop culture versus history narrative. And I think witches are weird in that sense because...
That could be the tagline. Witches are weird.
I mean, we can just do that, right? But because when it comes to our wide range of supernatural beings, vampires, skeletons, werewolves, whatever the Frankenstein's monsters, ghosts, all these things, witches are the only ones that are or could be considered real.
Oh, yeah, we've interacted with them all day long.
Yeah, so whether you have these people who are actually practicing Wiccan and pagan beliefs, and they identify it as witches, and that's very different. You're not going to... Skeletons aren't walking around the streets. You don't have...
wish.
Right.
Right? They stay static. So that's an interesting idea, because is that some sort of appropriation on some level? And I don't know.
But at the same time, you have, okay, so as someone who studies history, to me, what's more fascinating is people's interpretation of it and how they react to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't personally practice any type of witchcraft. And even if I did have the time, because I mean, honestly, like, it does take a lot of time and dedication. I can't say I would or would not be offended by that. I don't think I would, only because I look at it as a historic, it's like it's a historic interpretation. Everyone has their own perception of a witch, whether they watched Hocus Pocus growing up or they saw The Wizard of Oz and they saw I had a kid on tour ask me, would the witches melt? Like, and
no.
they were referring to 1692 because that was their only...
That was their reference point for witchcraft.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to be one to say, no, this is not the right kind of witch, or no, this is the right kind of witch. I appreciate the
wide breadth of witchcraft interpretations.
The spectrum.
The scope of witchcraft.
Yes. There's so, and then you can bring it to all over the world, like each culture, and throughout time, throughout centuries, we all have these different interpretations
and sometimes
of
witches
witch.
Are, and like that's more of a crone sort of concept of a witch. But there are young women, there are old men. There's, when you look at the trials, the people who are executed fit a dozen different narratives of who they are and how they fit in the community. And people are like, well, it was all just these old. It wasn't.
Look at Abigail Hobbs. I'm kind of in love with Abigail Hobbs.
There's all sorts of people from all, and like culturally, and we've talked about some of them before and how their roles fit into the narrative of a witch. So I don't think that should be offensive.
Yeah,
I'll take a stand.
Yeah,
I tend to
I'll
agree with
hop
you.
on over there with you.
I know there are other folks in the community who are anti-green face, but I think it's fine. But other people will strongly disagree. I've had conversations with friends about it. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I am looking forward to eventually sitting down with some old, long-standing witches of Salem who have been here for decades, and maybe they
Get Therese from the Magic Parlor. Do you know her?
I do not.
She is super.
Okay.
She's a witch going back to the 1960s. She's like part of the Laurie Cabot crew.
Yeah.
And she dresses the part every day. She's got like the frilly sort of goth hippie stuff, even though she's an older woman. And she is the most nice, positive, cool person ever. And she's a Salem witch from back when the modern pagan revival started.
See, that's what I want. I want the timeline. I want someone who's seen it.
Love Therese so much.
Oh,
Definitely get her.
that would be fabulous.
She's seen all of it, from like when they first opened the first witch shop, through the big boom in tourism, to when the craft made everybody want to be a witch. And she's still living it now. And even though she's like our grandparents' age. She has a more active social life than any of us in this room do. Like, she's super. I love Therese.
I love it. Oh, now I'm excited to meet her.
Yeah, look her up. Therese DeVoe.
We got her. Or at least hopefully.
Do you have any advice to people visiting Salem?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Wait, would you like to share that advice with the listeners?
Advice for people visiting Salem. I say bring an extra suitcase for all the stuff you're going to buy. People come here from all over the country to stock up on their witch supplies. Like, I remember I was in Hutchinson, Kansas, for example, and I mentioned to a lady who was just working in a shop there that I was from Salem, and she very, darts her eyes around and sort of coyly pulls out a pentacle necklace from underneath her shirt. And she's like, "You're from Salem? I can actually show you this." And we get people like that who are from all over the world who they come here and they go nuts because you can go to the stores and get any god or goddess statue you want. It's almost like the action figures. You can pick and choose whichever ones you want. And then there's all the witchy fashion, and then there's all the fun tourist trinkets.
And you can walk around with your pentacle or pentagram out, and no one gives you a second look.
Bring an extra suitcase for all the fun stuff you're going to buy. That's my number one thing. Also, do just a little bit of research before coming here, both about the attractions, find out what you want to go to so you don't get surprised. Like everything, I recommend pretty much all the attractions, but some of them aren't for everybody. Some are more serious, some are more all in fun. So do your research. Find out what speaks to you, what you want to learn about. Find out what you want your experience to be, and then you can sort of cater your experience to your own tastes. So yeah, be prepared to buy a lot of stuff and plan. You really do want to plan.
I can't agree with you more on that second part.
Yeah.
Because so often people are like, what would you recommend to do in Salem? And I'm like, I don't know you.
What do you like?
Right? If you have no interest in first period architecture or, American literature, I am not going to send you to the Witch House or to the House of Seven Gables. However, if you love horror movies, I am going to send you to Count Orlok's Nightmare Museum.
Oh, I love that place.
Right?
Yeah, by the way, the snore was for first period architecture. I do like literature.
Yes.
But I would argue that even if architecture bores you to tears, the Witch House is absolutely essential. Like, that's really the only place in Salem that you get a real taste of what life would have been like for these people who survived and died during the witch trials. It tells the story through artifacts. Like, everybody who comes to Salem should go. Yes.
Yeah,
yep.
we love the corpse medicine.
Everybody who goes to Salem needs to go to the witch house. That one is on everybody's list. But do a little Googling. Like, even a lot of folks, like, I'll see kids with T-shirts with Cthulhu on it. And I'm like, oh, did you know H.P. Lovecraft wrote a story about Salem? And they have no idea.
Like, what? And you're like, okay, the thing on the doorstep's mediocre, but...
Well, the Pickman's model.
Yes.
Pickman's model, which I'm glad that sort of organically came up. Because squatting right next to the Charter Street Cemetery is a creepy little brown house, which is now the cemetery welcome center for the Charter Street Cemetery. The ghost story that's usually attributed to it, the story about depending on who's telling it, it's always a man and it's always a woman. The woman has done something to upset the man, so he murders her by pouring hot wax down her throat and all over her body and basically makes her into like a wax candle woman. And she dies horrifically, and people say they see her screaming in the windows. That is totally bunk. That is a made-up story which can be traced to somebody from the Wax Museum many, many, many years ago.
Oh, how convenient. It's like right there.
But that never happened. Jeff Page from the tour Sarah works for,
Indeed.
He did trace a real murder to that house, but there is evidence of a real murder that took place there, but it did not involve a wayward lady and an angry man coating her with hot wax. That's a lie. But that house is historically significant from a literary perspective because when H.P. Lovecraft visited Salem, that inspired him to write his story Pickman's Model. Now, in my opinion, Pickman's Model is the best Lovecraft story. I like it because it's got the connection to Salem. It's a good, creepy story, But more importantly, it's from the story Pickman's Model that we have that insidious myth of the tunnels underneath Salem. From Pickman's Model, in Lovecraft's imagination, some of the people from the witch trials were using this network of underground tunnels to scurry all the way to Boston. And that nobody ever mentioned the tunnels before Lovecraft had that story published in the 20th century.
It's incredible how a little pocket, a little piece of information can just grow and grow and grow and transform. And then you have these full-blown legends that are attributed to Salem that people still today on the streets, you'll hear them talking about it. I actually had heard that murder that you just talked about at the Pickman house where the woman was covered in wax, but I had heard that she was covered in hot tar.
Ooh.
Which sounds just as bad, but yeah.
Probably way worse.
Yeah, it would peel more skin off.
It would.
But then again, when wax gets really hot, if it's candle wax, it'll really burn you.
I don't know.
Should we
Creepy
test
things.
it? What's
No.
Kate up to?
What's Kate up to? Kate!
You're the one who bleeds Pepto-Bismol.
I do. Oh, yes, that's another thing. If you're going to be in Salem, you're going to eat a lot. Bring some Pepto-Bismol. We can cut that if you want. But there is so much good food in Salem these days.
It's true.
Do you have a favorite restaurant?
I do. It, once again, kind of depends on what you're going for.
Yep.
But I find, because I work on Essex Street, nearly every day I eat at the clumsily named Essex, New York Pizza and Deli.
So
They
I
are
will plug them as well.
fantastic.
I think
They're
they have the best
so
cookies in
good.
town.
Good cookies, good pizza, really nice folks who work there. I eat there all the time, and they do it nice and quick right before the tour.
Yeah.
So they're great. I also like the little Polish place right on Essex Street.
Yes.
Great pierogies and kielbasa. They make the best Italian sub around here. But those are for just when I'm eating. Like if you're going to go on a date or something, I highly recommend the Tavern in the Hawthorne Hotel. It's got nice, cushy seats. In the winter, they have a big roaring fire.
One of, like on a Wednesday afternoon or evening in the middle of January or February, you go in there. That's probably the best place to sit down next to fire.
Then you can sneak around and look in the haunted basement.
Ooh,
Are you a coffee drinker?
No.
Oh.
tea.
I do like tea.
Is there a specific place in town that
Jolie Tea is
I
very
love
nice.
it.
I haven't been there in a while. I should go back again. I always really enjoyed them. They had this like vanilla orange blend that was very pleasant.
They've got like over 200 teas in there. That place is incredible.
Didn't you put some pictures up from there recently?
Yeah, we went to do a high tea there.
Strongly recommend.
If you're going to have a high tea, you should go to the Seagrass Dispensary. That's not
that
my
kinda
thing,
high,
but
Mike.
they are a very nice one.
Sarah, is that what we're doing?
Don't look at me. I think people are catching on to this whole question of where do you like to get coffee? Because one of our listeners that I had on tour the other night, one of the first questions he asked me was, "So, where's your favorite coffee?"
Oh, that's fun.
And then we were right next to the Peabody Essex Museum. You know those lights? You know the lights because
know the
your
lights.
your promo photo, I love. You
Do
are
you? I was thinking
standing.
about getting a new one of those done.
I thoroughly enjoy that photograph of you.
I might redo the same photo.
Yeah.
If you get rid of yours, Jeff's gonna go and steal
Oh, then
it.
I'm going to keep it forever. I'm keeping it forever.
But if you've been to Salem, you know, if you walk down that greenway next to the Peabody Essex Museum, alongside the brick, they've got all that recessed lighting in the
Yes.
ground. And as I'm finishing up the tour and I'm chatting with our listeners, one of the first things he says is, "Psst, psst, psst. Is that the entrance to the tunnels over there?"
No!
As a joke. Oh, it was so good. It was so good.
You should have just been like, yes.
And then he's like, so let's talk some shit about other tours. And I was like, no, we can't do that.
That's for off mic. Although, while we're talking about tunnels and substances, do your listeners know of the bunghole?
I think
We
we should reserve that.
Should we reserve
Yeah,
it for
okay.
the ghost story episode?
Okay, yeah. Well,
Okay.
We've got a lot of we got to keep some good stuff.
and we want to do the sideshow stuff next time, or did we want to do that today?
We can do the sideshow stuff next time.
Okay.
Do we have any like ghostly encounters related to it possibly? or
We
no?
sure do.
Yes.
Probably my favorite true ghostly tale of all time comes from my time with the sideshow.
Very nice. Okay. So we're going to be sitting down once again with Mike Vitka, and we are going to be talking about ghost stories, telling some Salem-centered ghost stories.
Because both Sarah and I give more history tours, and Mike, you run
the Ghostly Tour.
Yes.
And to my knowledge, we are the first paranormal-themed tour in Salem.
Oh.
When Molly started Spellbound, there was one other tour operating, and they focused mostly just on the history. Molly, because of her background in paranormal and as well as the trend at the time for all the ghost shows on TV, was very smart to capitalize on not just the ghost stories, but the actual paranormal investigation part of it. And we were the first paranormal tour in Salem.
The science behind
And
it.
how many tours are there now? 71 last time I checked?
TripAdvisor has a lot. I think there's only about 15 or 20.
Okay. And growing every day.
Always. Full disclosure, that was my first tour job.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I won't say it.
Oh,
but you could rent EMF detectors.
That's fun.
And so like I would give the people that, but I felt so bad because I'm not a paranormal
Okay.
investigator.
I'm
you know?
glad you brought up the EMF detector. Basically, what that does is Oh, okay. All right. We'll put that for next time.
We'll cap it. We've got plenty here.
I think one last question. Do you have any advice to give the people out there?
It can be
Anything.
Salem related, life related.
Advice from Dr. Vitka.
Funny.
Advice from Dr. Vitka. I mean, honestly, if we're going to be philosophical about it, just like do what you want to do. Like have fun. Like don't waste your life just being boring and stupid. Like do what you actually want to do. Like
Yes.
I enjoy doing the tours, and when I stop enjoying it, I'm going to do something else. And that's what everybody should do. Just do what they want to do and have fun.
I love it.
I appreciate that so much.
Huzzah.
Huzzah!
So before we jump out, do you want to plug what you've got?
Yes. If you want to take the premier ghostly tour in Salem, go to the Spellbound Tours website. That's spellboundtours.com. Also, tickets are available the day of, if they're not sold out, at the Magic Parlor at 213 Essex Street in Salem, obviously. Oh, one more bit of advice.
Yes.
Please, when you buy tickets, whether it's for Spellbound or Bewitched or Better Than Fiction or whatever in the world you want to do, make sure you are coming to Salem, Massachusetts. I can't tell you how many times it's happened. I've been at the visitor center at the Paul Revere Bell where we meet the tour, and I'm checking people in, and I'm looking at the manifest, and there's like a name or two that aren't there, so I call them up and ask, are you running late? Do you want to come on a different day? Where are you? We're at the Bell and we've got to get started. And the people will say, yeah, we're here. We're here at the visitor center. Where are you? Like, yeah, I'm here. I've been here for 20 minutes. They're in Salem, Oregon, or Salem, New Hampshire, waiting to learn the history of the Salem, Oregon witches. It's happened every year since I've been doing this. So please remember, these are tickets for Salem, Massachusetts. So go to spellboundtours.com to get your tickets. There's also a fun blog we need to update with some ghost stories on it. We have the Spellbound Tours Instagram, which is mostly just fun Salem pictures and stuff. And also, if you have photographs of your own ghostly images you want to get debunked or you want me to try to authenticate, go on to spellboundtours.com. We have an email link. It takes a while to get back to you, but we do eventually get back to everybody.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
And we will be having you back next week to talk about some spooky, haunted Salem specific. Exactly. I love it.
Remember, if you've been enjoying the podcast, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tell a couple of your friends.
And check us out on all the social medias. That's at Salem the Podcast.
We will definitely be sharing some elephant photographs after today's interview. And any questions, please feel free to email us, hello@Salem the Podcast. And even though we will be recording our Salem Ghost Stories episode soon, please still send those in.
Yeah, we'd love to. We can share those as well through the coming months if you're coming in October. But whenever you come to Salem, if you're looking to book a tour with Sarah or myself, links to both those companies are in the show notes. Thanks for listening.
See you later.
So it's me.
You have a good voice for this.
Thank you. That's why it started. I had so many participants like, do you have a podcast? Do you read audiobooks?
Oh, those are just perverts.
That's Ben wants to
Borrow the stuff to do that. Yeah. I know. This is gonna sound gross. Maybe not. I think he should read erotica.
Ooh,
I
I really think I think there is a market for it.
Bigfoot erotica.
there is definitely a market for that.
That's what I got them for the past 2 years for the Magic Parlor Yankee Swap Christmas thing.
There's a Magic Parlor Yankee Swap Christmas.
For the folks associated with the Magic Parlor,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, that's so fun.
I got a book called something like, what was it? Something like Fertilized by the Behemoth Sasquatch. And then a horrible movie from the 60s called The Geek, which is like a pornographic film. The Sasquatch is a man in a gorilla suit with a strategic cutout.
Oh my god. Bigfoot sex.
Okay.
You can leave that in.
Welcome to Salem the podcast.
Yeah, this is gonna be good. And then let's talk ghost stories. So we're just gonna be like, and we're gonna keep Mike on the podcast to talk about Salem haunted.
The tunnels, the very real tunnels.
You're done.
Exactly.